Passover. Now, in ancient times, this annual celebration was agrarian in nature, like a wheat festival or spring harvest, the Shavuot. And later, it came to commemorate the giving of the law to Moses on Mount Sinai, still celebrated on the 50th day after Passover. The Sinai covenant is a foundational event for the Judeo-Christian tradition. The Pentecost event of Acts is a foundational event for the formation of the Christian church, celebrated 50 days after Easter each year and considered the birthday of the church. So happy birthday. What better word than birthday to remember the Holy Spirit whose essence birthed the dramatic events of Pentecost and eons ago birthed the creation itself. As we just read about creatures, both small and great, in today's psalm, you send forth your spirit and they are created, and so you renew the face of the earth. In both Hebrew and Greek, the words for spirit, ruach, and pneuma, P-N-E-U-M-A, just like pneumonia, they're also the words for breath or wind. And it's the sound like a rush of a violent wind that disrupts the disciples as they are sitting at that Pentecost festival. I wonder what they were thinking just before the rush of that violent wind sound. It's been just 10 days since Jesus ascended into heaven, and 50 since the discovery of the empty tomb. Yes, they've had experiences with their resurrected Lord, yet after each experience, can't you imagine them wishing that he would just remain with them instead of he dies and then he's resurrected and now he's ascended? I mean, I would be wondering, are you going or are you staying? And did they wonder not only why Jesus had to go, but did they also forget what Jesus told them several weeks before, which is in our gospel today? Whatever their thoughts, the Spirit burst forth. Divided tongues as a fire appear, and a tongue rests on each of the disciples, and all of them are filled with the Holy Spirit. Surely Jesus' disciples also experienced the rush of adrenaline, maybe a rise in their heart rates. Can't you imagine them feeling as if they are coming alive again, rather than being kind of down about Jesus again ascending? Their dramatic, inspired, multilingual experience may have reminded them of extraordinary experiences they had with Jesus post-resurrection. And then they probably remembered Jesus told them that he would send the advocate, the Spirit, to them, that when he goes, the Spirit comes. I always think, what goes up must come down. Advocate has several meanings. A lot of people think of it in a legal sense. An advocate is one who sticks with you, supports you. So a lot of us use that Trinitarian formula, creator, redeemer, sustainer. The sustainer is that advocate who's always with us, constantly supporting us. An advocate is also a communicator, and communication is definitely a theme in today's gospel reading. A while back, I heard a story about a judge, speaking of communication, who was presiding over a case in his county seat. The defendant had been charged with drunk driving, but it didn't stop there. He was also charged with assaulting a police officer, the one who arrested him. So in the middle of this court proceeding, the district attorney was trying to prove that the defendant that night knew the officer who arrested him was a police officer because he was wearing a police uniform. So the district attorney asked the police officer in the witness stand, "And how were you attired when you pulled the defendant over?" The witness looked at him blankly and then said, "Would you please repeat the question?" And after the question was repeated 3 times, finally you could see the light bulb going on in the witness's face. And he said, "Oh, I was traveling on standard issue radial tires." Communication. We need interpretation even when we're speaking our own language, let alone different languages. For all kinds of reasons, we may not understand the word, we may not know the word, or if you're like me this week, for example, my husband was talking to me about Wendy, his cousin. It was making no sense whatsoever until I finally thought, oh, he's not talking about Wendy, his cousin. He's talking about Andy, his friend. But I heard Andy instead. Well, I heard Wendy instead of Andy. So in our hearing, we can get mixed up with our own language, let alone, again, other languages. And sometimes when we move, we have trouble. My son moved to New Zealand, and he had trouble getting used to appetizers were called entrees, and entrees were called mains. And his little 4-year-old son used to say to me, put it on the bench, put it on the bench. And I'd be looking for a bench, and finally realized the bench in New Zealand is the kitchen counter, which isn't down there anywhere, it's, up here.